Delayed gratification. When it comes to health, wellness, and high performance, that's the holy grail, right? Well, not so fast. Back in 1970, psychologist and Stanford professor Walter Mischel performed the marshmallow study. It purported to show that children who were able to delay gratification by choosing not to eat the marshmallow when left alone in the room in order to earn 2 marshmallows went on to garner greater success across a range of areas, including school and careers. It's been a cornerstone concept for speakers, coaches, consultants for a long time, decades. But can it go too far? Today's guest, Dr. Jacqueline Rifkin, has spent her career answering that question, studying how we manage our resources, including time, money, and even experiences. Her findings, which she recently shared in a fascinating Wall Street Journal article, may not exactly align with what you've been taught. Maybe there is a time and place to eat that marshmallow after all. We'll talk about the other side of delayed gratification, the specialness spiral, and much more. And I think you'll be surprised, perhaps encouraged by what she has to share. Dr. Rifkin has her PhD in marketing from Duke University and has done extensive work in both marketing and consumer research marketing. She is an assistant professor of marketing at Cornell University, teaching consumer behavior at both the undergrad and graduate levels. Thank you for joining us here on the Catalyst 360 podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Brad Cooper of Catalyst Coaching 360. And if you're a coach who has not yet registered for the MBHWSC-approved Rocky Mountain Coaching Retreat and Symposium in Estes Park, Colorado this September, it's time to stop delaying your own gratification and get registered as soon as possible. Now in the 6th year of this event, it's the first ever retreat and symposium dedicated specifically to health and wellness coaches ever created. And it's become a must for coaches looking not only for valuable continuing education, but also for a chance for low-cost opportunity to get rejuvenated and connect with the beauty of the Rocky Mountains and the incredible coaches who will be there with you. All the details on our Institute site under the Retreat tab, catalystcoachinginstitute.com, or email us anytime with questions. Results@catalystcoachinginstitute.com. And if you're not yet a coach, you can find details about our next cohort for the certification that was rated #1 by Fortune magazine on that same site as well. Now, let's put an end to delaying our own gratification and join Dr. Jacqueline Rifkin for her insights on the latest episode of the Catalyst 360 podcast. Dr. Rifkin, this is such a pleasure. I loved your article in the Wall Street Journal. In fact, I'd love to have you tell us, how did that happen? How did that come about? And had you done many of these in the past? Did they reach out to you? Tell us about this whole concept of delayed gratification and your Wall Street Journal article.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a very exciting opportunity for me. So I've been doing research on the topic for several years now. Some of it was early on in grad school. Some of it was actually my dissertation work. So it's definitely been sort of my focus for the last decade or so. And I was fortunate enough to do the Hidden Brain podcast, the NPR podcast.
Sure.
Hosted by Shankar Vedantam, and that came out last summer.
Okay.
And so I suppose the
put you on their radar.
Science journalists of the world, must have heard it and reached out, and so sort of in touch with the editors there at Wall Street Journal over the course of the last year, talking about good topics to include and ways to kind of communicate my findings in a way that's accessible. And it came out a few weeks ago, which was very exciting.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, it's such a big topic. I think you're probably thinking there might be a book out there down the road, but you don't have to reveal that here. We can hold off on that. We'll get you back for that one. So let's dig into it. Your research explores how consumers manage limited resources, things like time and money. How might the pursuit of delayed gratification, and I'm going to use the word extreme self-control over desires, actually undermine well-being and performance? We've grown up hearing about the Mischel study and the marshmallow study and all that kind of stuff, and how important delayed gratification is, and this is the key to success. And all of a sudden you come out and go, well, maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think all of us were raised in this milieu of, don't go for the cake right away. Don't spend all the money right away. Don't blow all your savings right away. And I think these are good lessons. I think it's really important to learn how to resist temptation and sort of stay humble and stay motivated and just sort of, slow and steady wins the race and be patient, essentially. These are great life lessons and ones that, I care a lot about. My concern is when that becomes the only mode of living and when that becomes sort of the default answer to any opportunity that presents itself, especially opportunities that could bring us joy and happiness. So I could take the day off from work and do something fun with my friends, or I could save that PTO day, hang on to it, and take it later. There's a restaurant that I've been really wanting to go to. They have this really great dish that I've been excited about, and I could go and get a reservation tonight, or I could wait until I have something to celebrate or until a friend is in town, and so I could just sort of kick that down the road as well. My concern is when we start thinking, I'd better wait, I'd better exercise patience, I'd better save these things, when that becomes sort of the default decision across the board. I think that's where there start to be these sort of slow, gradual costs, not just to sort of, the environment and shelf space, the accumulation of things, but also to our well-being.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll dig into that further. As you're talking about that, we had a guest talk about graduation versus retirement, that next phase of life. And so often I talk to folks that are in their 50s or 60s, and it's hard to get off that saving thing. And then you see the heartbreaking stories of someone retires and, a month later they have a stroke and they never get to do that RV trip and they never get to do you explore some of that, third phase of life type stuff in your research as well? Because I think you don't know. You don't know. Do I have 40 years? Do I have 20 years? Do I have a year? And so it's this huge unknown. And it seems like your research adds a lot of value in the don't go extreme on either end. There is a balance to this whole equation.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't personally looked at sort of like, I'm not going to call them end of life decisions, but sort of,
Phase 3.
the autumn of your life decisions. Explicitly, although I will say that there's other research out there, not mine, looking at how when we know that things are coming to an end and sort of windows of opportunity are closing, those things do tend to motivate us to take advantage of opportunities. So this is not the same thing as being in retirement, but just literally a gift card, like a gift card to an amusement park. When we know that the gift card is expiring in the next few weeks, that tends to be the thing that gets us out the door and gets us to actually redeem the thing. Although I will say at a high level, redemption of gift cards is shockingly low. Oh, yeah. We still tend to let those go to waste. But one of the things that does motivate some people some of the time is when that thing is coming to a close. So if you did know, I only have maybe 5 good years of skiing left in me, or I only have, this flight path is ending. I'm only going to have access to, a nonstop flight to Tokyo for the next 6 months. Those are the types of things that do make us kind of jump to action and take advantage of opportunities. But what I'm kind of more interested in, what I think is potentially a much more resonant thing that a lot of us experience, is that there isn't really a deadline to most opportunities in our lives. You could kind of do anything at any time. And so the question is, what do you do then when there's sort of this wide open ocean in front of you? If I could do it today, I could do it tomorrow, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. We don't know. We don't know the natural deadlines on our life experiences. Right. And so figuring out where to strike that balance, like you said, of not necessarily blowing our life savings this week, but also not just pushing everything off. Yeah. That's sort of that area where I think there's a lot to learn.
And is there something in there about creating your own deadlines where I feel like you kind of dipped your toe into that concept? Is that part of the approach of, okay, it's not a gift card with a December 31st expiration, but that restaurant, we're going to go before June 27th or whatever.
Yeah, so I kind of waver back and forth on what's sort of the right way to go, and maybe different things work for different people, or maybe all of these strategies are useful, and
Sure.
It's just sort of like we should use as many interventions as we can. In one of the papers that I talk about in the Wall Street Journal piece, we talk about this phenomenon where people keep saving possessions that they would like and want to use, but they just keep waiting for a better occasion. We call that sort of a specialness spiral, because the thing that you're waiting to use starts to feel more and more and more important and more special, and less and less likely to be used. And so one of the interventions that we discuss, we don't test it in this paper, is basically creating occasions. So sort of like creating deadlines, but creating occasions. So instead of saying, I'm going to buy this t-shirt just to have sort of an open-ended occasion, you could say to yourself, I'm going to buy this t-shirt for the barbecue I'm going to this weekend. So sort of isolating an occasion and then obviously following through on that can be one way to not get into this cycle where you're saving and waiting. Another version of that is I'm just going to use this at the next available opportunity. So I'm buying the shirt today, it's on my body tomorrow, weather permitting.
So let me just repeat this back, because I think folks need to get their arms around this. The specialness spiral, it's where something, maybe it's a candle, a bottle of wine, a t-shirt, whatever, it's special, but it's not like super special. But then we delay it. We're like, well, we got to save that bottle of wine for a better occasion. And each time we do that, it adds a layer of specialness to it. So we're even less likely to use it on the next one. Am I catching that whole thing?
Yeah, that's exactly the idea of it. So this is a paper I started early on in grad school with a colleague, Jonah Berger, who's at Wharton at University of Pennsylvania. And that's exactly right. We were sort of fascinated by all of these items that we all have lying around the house.
Sure.
Not too expensive, not too unique. Like you said, candles, socks, t-shirts, and how they manage to stick around and keep getting deferred and keep getting saved. And they start to take on this level of value and specialness where a $10 bottle of wine from Trader Joe's becomes this special piece that you want to reserve for your 10-year wedding anniversary.
And when does rationale play a role here? Can you sit down and go, come on, Coop, are you serious? Like, it's a $10 bottle of wine. We can get another. Or is it too late? Like, once you start down that spiral, it builds the momentum and we just need to pick our spot.
It's a good question. I've never asked anybody if they've sort of managed to talk themselves out of a specialness spiral once it had taken hold. We know from decades of psychology research that we tend to interpret our actions after they've happened. So
right.
I spent a lot of money on this brand of bag. I must really be into this bag. Or I didn't donate to this particular cause, so I must not really care about this particular cause. We act and then we kind of figure out what it means after the fact. So once you've sort of said, no, this wine isn't right for a Tuesday, and then the next week it's not really right for a Wednesday, and then the next week it's not really right for a Thursday, you're kind of interpreting your own actions and saying, well, this must be, if I'm waiting, there must be something worth waiting for. And so kind of backing yourself out of that after you've sort of interpreted your own narrative and adjusted, and, it's hard to sort of unthink your thoughts.
Right. Well, and I could see a value to doing that too, because you can literally, as in your example, take a $10 bottle of wine from Trader Joe's and elevate it to this super special. So when you do finally crack it open, it just feels better. I guess the danger is you don't crack it open.
The danger is you don't crack it open. And so that's, money that was wasted, shelf space that is being used, memories that you didn't make. So there's a lot of these little costs that might seem sort of mundane or sort of, trivial in isolation. The concern is how much is around us that we're carting from move to move, that we're, not donating, other people aren't having a chance to enjoy. How much are we surrounded by that is sort of, we're holding on to it, but not really deriving the life experiences from them.
Nor is anyone else able to either. Yeah. All right. So psychological scarcity, the article talks about this, leads people to fixate on unfulfilled wants. How can the scarcity mindset impact decision-making and the behaviors related to our health or other similar types of goals?
So there's quite a bit of research out there, far beyond anything I have ever attempted to do or will attempt to do, looking at these effects of scarcity. And you're right, it can be sort of like a scarcity mindset. So for some of us, in some cases, it's fleeting. It's that moment of, I thought I had a 10 in my wallet and I don't. And now I feel just a little bit stressed out about the fact that I don't have cash or I have less cash than I thought. But for other people, it's chronic. There's people that live in chronic conditions of poverty, chronic conditions of economic instability. Again, it doesn't have to just be money. It could be time. A lot of us feel chronically low on time. You can feel chronically low on energy or mental bandwidth. And there's a lot of research to suggest that when we have these sort of, more chronic feelings of scarcity, it really affects the way we make decisions, and it really affects the way we perceive the world. It draws our attention, so it causes something called a cognitive narrowing. When you are aware of the fact that you're low on cash, or when you're aware of the fact that you're low on time, it's kind of all you can think about. And so it sucks some of that brain power away from other things that you might want to do. If you've ever tried to talk to somebody on the phone when they're running late, they're sort of only half paying attention to you. They're sort of super focused on how little time they have and how they have to run out the door. And the same thing happens for people that are in these sort of chronic periods of scarcity or poverty. They're sort of some part of their existence is kind of taken up by that chronic situation. And so decisions are made very differently. Judgments are made very differently. And we prioritize things very differently. It's sort of it's a different state than feeling like you have enough or feeling like you have sort of your needs met.
Wow, this is super interesting. So the word busy, it seems like that's become our default answer. How you doing, Jacqueline? Oh, I've been busy, Brad. I've been busy. Is that, as you were talking about the chronically low on time and the way that, not just money, finances, those kinds of things, but literally time narrows that, is our default use of the word busy making it worse?
That's a great question. So there's a really interesting paper that came out maybe a decade ago at this point, somewhere between 5 and 10 years ago. The first author was Sylvia Bellezza, who's at Columbia University. She looks at what happens when we see other people that are busy. So the classic example is you see someone in the train station and they've got their Bluetooth in and they're talking and their laptop out and their Apple Watch is ringing. They're clearly like a super busy individual. Or we probably all know people that when we ask them, how are you doing? They say, oh, I'm so busy. I've got no time. Or friends that you try to spend time with and they say, okay, I could probably pencil you in next month for a 15-minute coffee chat. What do we make of people that seem super busy? And what she finds is really interesting. She finds that we actually believe that they're higher status. We elevate them to this level of being more important, higher status, kind of more valuable individuals. And the idea, again, sort of goes back to this notion of scarcity. So if this person, as a resource, is scarce, there's not enough of them to go around. All of their dollars are all of their time is spoken for. All of their minutes are accounted for. they must be a valuable individual. People want a lot from them. Everybody wants a piece of them, and they, as a resource, are scarce. We tend to really elevate people that seem super busy. So if there are these sorts of kind of wellness costs associated with being busy, we might be shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit by kind of elevating these people to a higher status and kind of lionizing it, and perhaps even encouraging ourselves to be as busy as possible.
Well, and that's my sense. I think people are humble bragging when you say, "How are you doing?" "Oh, I'm busy." "Oh, really? Wow." As you said, you must be really important. I don't think that's how it's being used. I think it is. I think that research study must have gotten out there because I think our people are saying that because they're expected to say it. If you don't say you're busy, if you say, "Oh yeah, I've been just enjoying life. I've got a little more margin in my life right now. It's been great. Yeah, I'm filling up with good things, but I don't have that busy feeling anymore." Wow, awesome. And yet, wow, what's wrong with your life?
Exactly. And what's interesting is that it kind of makes sense. It tracks now. But if you think about it in comparison to sort of old school kind of philosophy of labor and class, like Veblen theories about the leisure class, the old school kind of understanding of being an important high status person is that you have no work, right? You just relax all day, and you have your servants, and you have your staff, and you have your laborers that are, outside tending the fields. And if you're so important, if you're royalty or whatever it is, you can afford to do nothing all day. And that's how we used to think about sort of wealth and status and being in demand and being sort of a valuable individual. But now it's completely flipped on its head. And these people that, I have someone to do my cooking because I don't have time for that. And I have someone to do my cleaning because I don't have time for that. And I have to pencil all my social engagements 2 months out and have a Google Calendar for everything. Those people that have no time to even breathe, those are now sort of the super high status aspirational people.
Well, maybe we can start a trend today with all our listeners of when someone says, "Oh, I've been busy," our response can be, "Oh, I'm so sorry," instead of, "Oh, wow, you must be important," even though we don't really use those
say, "Oh,
words.
That's too bad. I hope you can have a break soon."
I hope you can, not even a break. I hope you can enjoy filling it with, I don't know, busy to me is demand and supply are not in alignment. It means you've got too much demand on your supply of time. And
interesting.
So, anyway, separate topic. So for those, speaking of which, actually, the next question, those struggling with burnout or depletion from over restricting their desires, give us some practical stuff. What are some strategies from your work to introduce beneficial, let's call them indulgences or treats or special stuff in a mindful way, not just, I need comfort food, boom. I need to go on a shopping expedition, boom. I got to go on vacation. Not the knee jerk, but in a mindful way, what can we be doing when we find ourselves kind of getting to that tipping point?
You have kind of hit on all the pieces already. So I think I'm just going to rephrase what you already said. The answer is just to do it, but to do it intentionally. So I will push back gently on this notion of calling them indulgences. I think at least in the psychology literature, when we think about things that are indulgent, we think about things that feel good now, but have a cost later.
Okay.
So like having cake instead of fruit, or buying a nice bag when a cheaper, kind of more utilitarian one could work just as well. So when we think about indulgences, it sort of feels good now, but then there's some sort of other shoe that drops at some point later, whatever it is, sleeping in instead of going to class, things like that. Not everything functions like that. Some of the things that we do just for ourselves, just to make ourselves happy, don't have this double-edged sword where there's a cost later. Going out for 15 minutes in nature when you have a break during work, there's no gotcha moment associated with that. It's
except
just
for the boost.
Good for you.
It's just good. Exactly.
It's only good. It's only upshot. And it's upshot now because you're going to get stress relief in the moment. It's going to be upshot later because maybe you took a photo of a really beautiful bird that you saw that you then get to show people and look at and make it your phone wallpaper. So it's only upshot. So these are not, I would say, traditional indulgences. They're moments that are just for you, just for your own happiness. The term that we use in the research and in my work as well is something called self-gifting. It's just a gift to yourself. Importantly, it does not have to be expensive. So it could be a video on YouTube. So with my participants, when I study self-gifting, I have them watch these 2-minute painting videos on YouTube, which I don't know if you've seen them, but they're incredibly relaxing. We give people a single biscotti. So, it's a cookie. It's not a carrot stick, but it's by no means going to decimate someone's eating regimen. A single cookie takes about 90 seconds to eat. It's just a little moment for yourself with no other intention but to make yourself sort of feel good or better in the moment. So it's not this kind of escapist shopping. It's not a spree. It's not impulsive. It's intentional. It's thoughtful. And it's meant to be a moment to sort of break you out of whatever it is that's stressing you out in that moment, which, by the way, is extremely hard to do. I'm painting it as this sort of easy decision. It's not, it's impossible. And that's why it's so interesting to study. But it's just doing it and doing it with the right intention.
And so this idea of self-gifting, would you suggest, and I don't think you've studied this specifically, but just in your mind, would you hypothesize that is unique to each person? One person, the video's great. Another person, the $10 gift, the extra coffee, whatever. Are there some guardrails we can put up around these so we don't use this as, well, I heard Dr. Rifkin and she said I need to buy this thing. Like, give us some helpful guide or guardrails on this.
It's a great point. So it's totally idiosyncratic. Self-gifting is all about the intention. So whenever I talk about self-gifting, either in the classroom or with other folks, I say it's not the thing that matters, it's the intention. So for me, the 2-minute paint video is self-gifting. For you, it's not. For a friend of mine, going for a 10-minute dog walk is self-gifting, but for someone for whom it's their job, they're paid to go on 10-minute dog walks, it's not. So it's all about the intention. It's all about what you personally feel is something that you can do just for yourself and for nobody else. And so again, thinking about the guardrails, I hesitate to say, well, this category of consumption is in, that category of consumption is out. But if we are kind of thinking about, advice or things that we can at least ask ourselves in the moment is, what am I doing this for? So if you're on Amazon and there's whatever it is, a kitchen gadget that you're trying to decide whether or not to buy it, asking yourself, why do I want this? What is this going to serve me? And if the answer is, I'm so stressed at work that, I need something that cooks faster so that I have more time for work. That could be useful, but I don't know that that's necessarily self-gifting. Or if the answer is, well, all of my friends have this gadget and I feel like a loser for not having that gadget, so I'm just going to get it so that when they come over, they see that I'm also in the know. Maybe that has some utility, but I would not call that self-gifting. If the answer to your question is, I love to cook, cooking makes me happy, and this is something that when I use it, I know it's going to enhance that experience for me, that would be self-gifting. And I think that would be a case where the expenditure hopefully is not that great, but that would be the type of thing that I think is worthwhile and important and is going to pay off dividends in the long run.
And you have a more recent study about when you're feeling constrained or you feel like you have limited bandwidth, that decreases the likelihood of self-gifting. I would have guessed it would be the opposite. Can you tell us more about that one?
Yeah, so this thought experiment that I like to talk about whenever I share this research with folks. By the way, this research is with two great colleagues, Kelly Gullo-White, who's at Indiana University, and Keisha Cutright, who's at Duke University. The thought experiment is as follows. So let's say that you are feeling super constrained. I'm sure it is very hard to relate to this notion, but bear with me and try to pretend that you're feeling busy and stressed and not quite as cash rich as you would like and don't have a lot of mental bandwidth or time to really think about things. You're just feeling squeezed kind of from all angles. And I appear and I say, I actually have a gift card. We could go get a massage for free, but we've got to go right now. Would you take me up on it? And I think in our ideal world, the instinct is like, well, of course. But when push comes to shove, at least what I find when I talk to people and in my experiments that I've conducted, people are not really taking me up on it. They're saying, no, this is not the moment to go and have a massage. I'll take the gift card and maybe I'll redeem it some other time. And as we've already discussed, that might be a pipe dream. We're probably never redeeming the gift card unless it has a massive expiration date in giant red letters. And even then, maybe not. But the bottom line is that when we're feeling really squeezed, what I find in my research is that people tend not to take advantage of self-gifting opportunities. They tend to avoid them. And so that was really interesting for me because, like you said, it's a little bit counterintuitive. It seems like it's probably a bit of a self-sabotaging move. But I wanted to know why it was. And then once I know why, I can start to think about interventions to help people get over this hump. Because I do think ultimately it is sort of like a mental obstacle.
Was there a difference between time and finances? So your gift card example, if my feeling of limited bandwidth or constraint is finance focused, it seems like I'd be more likely to say, oh, that'd be great. Whereas if it's time, well, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't care that it's free. That's not my problem. My problem is not money right now. It's this, or the opposite, that we're more likely, because money is the thing and time is not. I don't know. Did you see any patterns with those seemingly very different reasons for feeling constrained?
We had the exact same question, and that's why across our studies we look at time constraint, financial constraint, energy constraint, and there's no differences. So it's not that one of these resources, when it's feeling strapped, we're less likely to engage in self-gifting. It seems to be this general psychological feeling of constraint, whatever kind of constraint it is. And we talk in the paper, we haven't tested it formally, but space constraints. If you've got too much stuff and your walls just feel like they're not big enough to contain everything you need. We talk about energy constraints. So that feeling that you get when you look at your phone and there's only 12% battery left, and you get this anxiety and like, my phone could die at any minute, and what am I going to use these last few bits of juice on? Any type of constraint, which, as we've already talked about, has this sort of mental heaviness and mental drain to it. When we're in that state, no matter where it comes from, we start to make these decisions to deprioritize things that would make us happy.
So it seems like there's a strategy here. So any constraint changes the way in which I do a number of things that you've gone through. Is there, and again, I don't expect, this is hypothesis, I don't think you've studied this specifically, but just walk it through with us. Would there be a value in, I don't know, once a week, once a month, something, doing a brief assessment of, am I overscheduling? Am I overspent? Is there, maybe it's a margin question. How can I create margin in my finances? How can I create margin in my time? How can I create margin in my energy? Is there some value in that self-assessment that would then free you up? And then you get the compounding effect where now I'm not making the quick decisions. So I probably have more energy, more time, more money. Is there anything there worth chasing on this rabbit trail a little bit?
So, by no means am I equipped or qualified to give financial advice or
Noted.
even scheduling and time management advice. You can ask my dog about my work habits, and he'll not have something nice to say. But I can tell you what I found in my experiments. One thing that we do in this sort of second paper that we're talking about now, which was my dissertation, was we have people that are feeling more or less constrained. So we've got the people that are feeling relatively good on time, cash, whatever it is. And then we've got a second group of people that are feeling quite squeezed, quite constrained, which again must be so hard to relate to. And we force everyone to engage in self-gifting. So it's either the single biscotti, eat as much or as little as you want. We're not forcing anyone truly to do anything, or the 2-minute paint video. All we say is that this is time for you to use however you want. You can watch the video, you can eat the biscotti or not. You can just sort of sit quietly, but it's just a moment for you to be with yourself and do something that is just for you. So this notion of me time sounds very corny, has been co-opted by many industries, but we say this is just a moment for you. So hearkening back to that definition of self-gifting. And then we ask people how they feel after the fact. Actually, we ask people how they feel both before and after the fact, so we can see the change.
So it's been forced. Now we come back to them and say, we forced this. Now how you doing there?
How you doing there?
Okay.
And what we were really interested in were the people that were feeling quite squeezed and constrained going into it. Because these are the people that we have identified are the ones that if we gave them the choice, if we said, you can do this, optional or not, they would say no.
Right.
And any of us who have had, a meeting canceled on a particularly busy day, we have an hour that just freed up on us. What do you do with it? You just keep working. You say, this is my hour to get caught up on emails. This is my hour to go and put a load of laundry in. So we're going to fill that time with more work. We ask those people how they're feeling before and after the fact. And what we find is interesting. One, we find that those people actually experience relaxation and stress benefit. So they didn't think they would feel better. They didn't think they would feel happier, more relaxed. And that's a huge part of the reason why we tend to eschew these opportunities, is because we think they won't actually relax us. We think we'll be way too fixated on all the things we could be doing instead. But that's wrong. So that's an important finding, number one, that we actually do derive stress and relaxation benefits from engaging in these brief self-gifting moments. Important finding number two is that delta from before to after was actually bigger for the folks that went into the experience feeling constrained.
Really?
So not only did they derive benefits, they derived anywhere between double and triple the benefits of the people that came into the experience feeling reasonably okay.
And is that because they haven't had any self-gifting or any break for so long that it's this almost like they're needing oxygen and they haven't taken a breath for 5 minutes and the other people have taken a breath in the last 30 seconds?
I think it's probably something like that. The fact that the baseline is lower, so there's more room kind of to grow. I think it's also the fact that transitioning from the state of sort of hyper focus and mental drainage and that heaviness that we've been talking about, and stepping out of that cloud to sort of taking a beat and stepping out of the noise for a second is a pretty big contrast versus the people who came in feeling, kind of mentally clear, then stepping into a moment of me time is, it's a little bit of a shift, but it's not a big shift. So one of the takeaways from those studies was that those moments when we're least likely to engage in self-gifting are actually the ones where we can stand to benefit the most. That's a huge takeaway. And the third takeaway, which is actually getting back to the question that you asked me, we asked them how stressed and busy and squeezed they felt. And what I thought was really astounding was that the people who had taken a few minutes for the biscotti or the video, this thing that we told them to do, the people that came into the experience feeling quite stressed and constrained felt less busy after the biscotti and after the paint video. To me, this is a wake-up call because, as I mentioned, if I get 10 minutes free, if I have a meeting end, or if I'm supposed to walk the dog, but a friend says, you know what, I'll walk your dog for you, I'm gonna free up 10 minutes of your time, I think the only way to feel less busy is to just start chipping away at my to-do list.
Right.
If I get 10 extra minutes, that's 10 minutes of getting through email.
Yep.
That's 10 minutes of opening my mail. That's 10 minutes of paying a few bills. The only thing that's going to give me relief is to just keep bearing down on my to-do list. But what these experiments showed me, at least, is that doing the opposite of that, not just filling the time with more work and actually taking a step back, stepping out of the noise, stepping out of the heaviness, and just taking a moment to not do anything. The to-do list is not getting any shorter. That can actually make us feel less busy.
Wow. High achievers, perfectionists, how would you suggest helping these folks avoid the potential downsides of taking that delayed gratification too far?
My hope that I have not substantiated is just that this is one of these things where once you see it, you can't unsee it. So talking about it, that's why I enjoy opportunities to have conversations like this, sharing with people just more conversationally. I feel like once you hear the pattern, it's very hard to unhear it. It's very hard to unthink our hot thoughts, which is where we started earlier on. So for me, at least now, when I have these sort of big crossroad moments where I have an hour of my life back, what am I going to do with it? Of course, I still have that instinct. I'm just going to catch up on work, or, I still haven't unpacked my suitcase. I can just fill it with chores and unpack the suitcase and get some grocery shopping done. I then am immediately hit with the thought of, well, I do this for a living, and I know that if I took a few minutes to myself, maybe I don't use the whole hour on a nature walk. Maybe I just start with 10 or 15 minutes in nature and then start chipping away at my to-do list, or 10 or 15 minutes of my hobby, or 10 or 15 minutes of whatever it is that relaxes you. I'm not saying that I make it on it 100% of the time. It's still really hard to unlearn what we were raised with and what society tells us is the right thing to do. But at the very least, I have the devil on my shoulder, but then I also have the angel on my shoulder saying, you know better, and you could take 10 minutes right now and nothing would happen. If anything, you would just feel better. I hope that just hearing that and meditating on it, and maybe after a couple of years it sinks in more. I don't know. We'll have to check back in for a postmortem in 5 or 10 years. But I hope it's one of these things that it just, repetition helps it sink in, and maybe practice makes perfect. I don't know. I wish I knew.
Well, and it seems like one of the biggest barriers is it's working. So you're an incredibly accomplished individual, and somewhere in your head, the reason you've accomplished so much in your life is because of these negative habits. So that's part of the battle too, is a lot of our listeners are like, that's why they listen, is they're high performers, and they're hearing you say, and somewhere they're saying to themselves, yeah, Dr. Rifkin, but I mean, I wouldn't be where I am today if I did what you're talking about. Is there any way, or maybe I should just pop the mirror around, how have you overcome that yourself? Because that's my problem. It's like, it's worked.
Yeah.
Why would I change? Yeah. Don't change what's working.
It's a great question. I mean, I think, and this is sort of getting more into the philosophy of things rather than the science of things. So I'm definitely beyond now speculation.
That's right. We love rabbit trails.
It's just a question of sort of what's the trade-off? What's the outcome that you want? So if the idea is, mental wellness and happiness is good, but it's not the end all be all, and I'd rather work and hustle and accumulate wealth and accumulate professional stature and accumulate feeling productive or feeling effective, then yeah, maybe you don't take my advice. I do think, though, at least there's quite a bit of research that looks at life regrets. And when you talk to people that are at the end of their life and kind of looking back and thinking, what should I have done more or less of? it is rare to see people that say, I wish I had worked more. I wish I had hustled harder. I wish I had gone harder on myself. You tend to see people saying the opposite. I wish I had savored more things. I wish I had just taken the PTO. I wish I had gone easier on myself. So it's not all of us, but I'd say on average, I think a lot of us would prefer happiness over being stressed but successful. So then the question is just how can we sort of baby step ourselves into doing that and trying it? But with the huge caveat that maybe that's not the priority for everyone.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is do a test retest, do an N of one. Okay, in my head, I'm only where I am because I never take a break. Let's try Wednesday to do a 15-minute step out in the sunshine, look at the trees, blah, 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 blah. And let's see if at the end of that day, if I got less done. So those are options too that should have most likely appeal to these high performers who are like, yeah, a self-study, that's what I need to do. I'm going to add one more thing to my list. But maybe this one helps them move in the right direction.
Absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of us have heard the phrase of work smarter, not harder. Right. And that's the idea of, putting in a really focused 6-hour day is better than putting in a really half-baked, low-quality 10-hour day. Not just for your wellness, but for your work. I mean, there's work on sort of objective quality of outcomes. Once you hit that barrier where you're sort of underslept and under-focused and sort of strung out, you're not doing good work anymore. And so what I really try not to do when I talk about this research is talk about how all this advice that I'm giving can ultimately make you a better worker. I really don't like tying it back around to, and this is how we can get more work done. I still am ultimately trying to say this is how we can be happier. This is how we can have stress benefits. This is how we can appreciate the things in life and not go to our deathbeds feeling like we missed out. But of course, feeling better makes us better workers. There's no way around it. I mean, that's an inevitability as well. No doubt. I just don't like when that's sort of when that's the carrot. I don't want that to be the carrot.
Right. I'm just wondering, how do you get the busy people to participate in your studies? I, as you were describing these folks, I'm thinking, because we live right by Colorado State University, and so my wife and I both will participate in some of the studies they're doing. They take time, and you don't do it when you feel like your bandwidth is zero. So how are you finding these people to participate in your study that fit that description?
The good news is that we have the power of experiments. So we can actually just bring in a bunch of people, regardless of who they are, and then experimentally manipulate how constrained they feel. So these are things that are very, very subjective and malleable in our minds. If I asked you to spend a few minutes thinking about why you might actually have more time than you used to, it's very easy to think, oh man, when I was in high school, I was so much busier than I am now. Or when my kids were younger, I was so much more taken up by that now. On the flip side, if I said, think about the ways in which you're more crunched than you've ever been in your life, it's really easy to come up with that too. So it's really easy to shift the frame of reference and get people to be thinking that they're relatively busy versus relatively unbusy, just with a very sort of light touch kind of manipulation.
That's perfect. And I think there's a message in what you just described too for managers, parents, friends. When you're emphasizing, are you feeling super busy today? I am now. Thank you very much. So, yeah, nice. Just a couple more. The title of your current study, actually, good, well done. FOMO: How the Fear of Missing Out Leads to Missing Out. So, what was this one all about? What is the FOMO role play in this whole thing with delayed gratification? And how can we find a healthier balance, you've touched on some of this, between goal pursuit and enjoying life, or thriving, whatever phrase we want to use? But great title, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. It's actually very timely. I just received some good news on this paper. I don't want to jinx anything, but I'll just cautiously, tentatively say that this may be something that could see the light of day in the medium-term future. So this is a paper that I've been working on for a really long time, for over 10 years.
Wow.
This is with two colleagues, Cindy Chan, who's at University of Toronto, and Barbara Kahn, who's at Wharton at the University of Pennsylvania. We have been wondering for years, what is this FOMO thing all about, and what is the psychology of FOMO? And again, just like I mentioned earlier, to the extent that I can understand what's going on under the hood, I can start to design some light touch interventions to hopefully help people find some relief. And so what we find over the course of this long and arduous project, which I love, but I jokingly say this paper could be in middle school right now, is that we tend to feel FOMO, as it's sort of colloquially called on the internet, when we're missing out on social experiences with people that we value. So this could be a fraternity trip, this could be a coffee, this could even be after work drinks. If you're on PTO and your coworkers are going out for drinks, these are the types of situations where we can start to feel FOMO. And the reason why FOMO was so fascinating to us, and perhaps different from what else had been looked at in the literature, is that it's very clear that if you're missing out on something excellent because you're doing something terrible, you're going to feel bad. So if all of your friends are at a party and you're home studying, that stinks. And it's very clear that that stinks. They're having a blast and you're, drowning your head in microbiology textbooks. That's lame. That's a terrible feeling. And we've all been there. Or if your friends went on a really fabulous luxury vacation, you didn't have the cash to go with them, so you're just home or you're on some inferior vacation. That's clear. That's well established. What is perhaps less clear is when the thing that you're missing isn't necessarily so great. It could even be negative. Like, what happens when all of your friends go to console another friend who just went through a personal tragedy and you couldn't make it either because of your work schedule or because of the flights? You couldn't be there for something like that. And it's not like it's so great. What are you really missing? And so what we talk about in this paper is that FOMO is really about this notion of people are bonding with each other and they're getting closer together. And what does that mean for you and your social relationships? And so we talk about how FOMO is really this anxiety about the social ramifications of missing out on bonding. So if my friends and family are chatting, they're making inside jokes, they're making memories, they're connecting, they're growing closer in this intangible way that has nothing to do with the event itself. It doesn't matter what food is being served. It doesn't matter what music is being played. It's just the fact that they're connecting. And what does that mean for my connections to them? That's really what's creating this kind of FOMO experience. And so that's sort of what's taken us, all of these years to sort of dismantle all of these different elements of what are we really missing out on when we feel FOMO. And it's really that kernel of feeling like there's connections being made and you're not there reinforcing your connections, and that terrible feeling that creates, that drives FOMO. So with that knowledge, now we think, okay, how can we create a light touch intervention? And so it's not just do something fabulous yourself, right? Like if all of your friends went to Bali and you couldn't go and you're feeling FOMO about it, it's not that like next year you just go to Bali. That's not gonna, if it was really just about doing the amazing thing, that would solve the problem.
Sure.
But that's not what the crummy feeling is. The crummy feeling is, well, gosh, what sorts of memories and connections have they made? And what is this going to feel like for me when I see them again? So what we ask people to do is we actually have them remember back to the last time that they made a strong connection with a friend. What was the last big hangout? What was the last big moment that you felt connected? What was the last big moment when you felt supported? And it's actually that kind of mental exercise that seems to be the thing that tamps down on FOMO. So it's not a keeping up with the Joneses story. It's not, if everybody's doing this, you need to do it too, or for fear of being left behind. It's basically kind of just remembering that you still belong and that you have belonged and that these people are not going to disappear on you. That can help tamp down on some of these crummy feelings that we associate with FOMO.
Wow. Well, congrats on almost getting it out there.
Almost.
We're so close. All right, last question. A little bit of research is usually me search. I want to hear a little bit about how you have digested this stuff and pulled it into your life. So the sweet spot around delayed gratification seems to be key to that thriving life. It sets things up. How do we thread that needle? Food, drink, exercise, work habits, schedules, all those kinds of things. If we overdo it, our universe shrinks to nothingness because we wasted everything. If we both ends don't work, basically. So for you, with all this work that you've been doing and constantly focusing this, what have you discovered in your own life about the practical application in that needle threading process?
I think it all goes back to the intention. I think if you're right on the cusp of do I or don't I, do I book the ticket? Do I go to the concert? Do I call out from work? Just thinking about what's the why, and really trying to be honest with yourself. And I'm trying to be honest with myself. So when I'm thinking about booking something, or when I'm thinking about doing something, or when I get invited to something, and the question is, do I say yes or no? What is my why? Is it to keep up? Is it to stay busy? Is it to feel cool? Is it to distract myself from bad things going on in my life? Or is it because when I think about it, I really believe that it could bring me a sense of calm, or I really believe that this is something that I care about? Either I've cared about it for a long time. I've always been passionate about music. I've always been passionate about seeing live music. I know that's one of my tonics. I know that if you put me in front of a live band, I'm going to enjoy myself. So learning what makes you happy, which of course requires trial and error, and then really asking yourself, if I do this, why would I be doing it? And I think that the more honest that we are with ourselves, the more that it helps us thread the needle. I've certainly been in cases where I've been invited to something and I have this instinct to say yes. And then after that initial sort of moment of excitement wears off, I think, I don't even know if I really want to do this. It just seems like the type of thing I should say yes to, or, it just seems like the type of thing that I'll want to have it as a story. It'll make me look good, later on. It'll be great to be able to say that I climbed to the top of the Tower of Pisa. Do I really want to climb to the Tower of Pisa? No, I'm fine with taking a picture from the ground. I think the more honest we can be with ourselves, the more that needle eye becomes clearer.
When it sounds like reflection is the missing element here. It's taking that time. Maybe we have a lot of health and wellness coaches that listen to this, so maybe that's something a coach can help you reflect upon. Okay, so why did you take that step? What was your, or journaling, or just going for a walk and thinking this? It seems like what you described is creating reflection in your life.
Yeah, just self-awareness, checking in with yourself before and after you do things, right? So that's what I do in my research, but, people love to collect data on themselves. If you were invited to go to some sort of sporting event and you go because you feel like it's the right thing to do and because all of your friends are going to be there, and after the event you realize, the sun was beating down on me. It was really loud. I kind of had a headache. I ate junk food. I don't actually feel that great. That wasn't actually that fun for me. Remembering that and being honest to that reaction, being honest and true to your own values. I would caution against being overly obsessive with kind of keeping data and quantification with your activities. But yeah, being aware of what makes you happy, what doesn't, having that sort of, like you said, introspective nature, and thinking about why are you doing things? Is there any possibility that you'll enjoy yourself? Or is there, perhaps some other reason that it's a consideration, and just at least trying to ask yourself those questions.
Dr. Rifkin, Fantastic job. I know you're not going to announce your book yet, but I think there's going to need to be a book on this. This is good stuff. Thank you for joining us. It was a pleasure. Awesome information.
Thank you so much.
All right. Anybody else pulling out that marshmallow? If you're an employer, EAP, or wellness service provider who would like to move beyond generic coaching for the employees that you serve, Catalyst Coaching 360 has been the best-in-class leader since 2007. In addition, you can now access a range of specialty coaching options, including tobacco cessation, pre- and post-surgery outcomes, and high-performance executive and manager coaching. All the details on our catalystcoaching360.com site, or you can reach out anytime. Results at same site, catalystcoaching360.com. And now, it's time to be a catalyst. This is Catalyst Coaching 360, Dr. Brad Cooper. Make it a great rest of your week, and I'll speak with you soon on the next episode of the Catalyst 360 podcast, or maybe over on the YouTube coaching channel.